No one knew the truth behind Pastor Chika's rise to fame. Her sermons were fire. Every word seemed to pour straight from the heavens, and the women in her church adored her. They admired her grace, her charm, and her uncanny ability to connect with them on a deeply personal level. But beneath that holy facade, there was a secret no one could ever suspect. Pastor Chika was tied to something dark, and it's something no one could see. Years ago, before she became the powerful and beloved preacher everyone knew, Chika had been desperate. Her church was failing. Empty pews greeted her every Sunday, and her influence in the city was minimal. She wanted more. She needed more. That's when she met an old friend from her past, a woman named Ruth. Ruth had changed in ways that intrigued Chika. She had wealth, power, and influence, and her life seemed blessed in every way. Ruth introduced her to a secretive group called the Covenant of the Dark Flame, a shadowy order that promised wealth, power, and influence in exchange for our loyalty. At first, Chika thought it was some kind of spiritual mentorship. But as time passed, the truth became clear. "Do you want your church to grow?" Ruth had asked her one day after service. "Do you want to be a pastor everyone looks up to?" Chika, curious and desperate, had nodded. One evening, she was summoned to a secluded mansion, hidden from the world. Inside, a group of women in dark robes awaited her. Their leader, a woman with eyes as black as night, spoke to Chika in a cold voice. "You want power, Pastor Chika?" the woman had asked. "We can give you everything you've ever dreamed of. Your church will grow. People will worship you, and you will become one of the most famous pastors in the land." Chika's heart raced. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? The chance to rise above her current struggles and become the preacher everyone adored. "But there's a price," the woman continued. "To keep the blessings flowing, you must sleep with the women in your church. By doing so, their destinies and good fortunes will be transferred to our kingdom. Their lives will slowly unravel, but your church will thrive." Chika's blood ran cold. She had heard of evil covenants, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. At first, she refused. She couldn't imagine doing something so wicked. But then the woman placed a hand on Chika's forehead, and a surge of power coursed through her body. She felt invincible. The next Sunday, her church was miraculously filled with new faces, her influence suddenly growing without explanation. The temptation became too strong to resist. The first time she slept with one of the women in her congregation, it haunted her 4 days. But she told herself it was for the greater good. The church was expanding, more people were coming to Christ, and she was doing God's work, wasn't she? But soon, what had begun as a reluctant act became a ritual she couldn't stop. The covenant demanded more. The women she seduced had no idea what was happening to them. One by one, their lives started to crumble. Marriages fell apart, businesses collapsed, children fell sick, and their dreams turned to dust. All the while, Pastor Chika's church continued to grow, and her name spread across the country. People praised her as a beacon of hope, a true woman of God, unaware of the darkness lurking beneath. However, the women in the church started to notice strange things. First, it was the whispers in their dreams. They heard voices telling them that something was wrong. They brushed it off at first, thinking it was stress or overwork, but then things started to happen in real life. One of the women, a devoted member named Ngozi, lost her job unexpectedly. Another woman, a mocker, noticed that her once happy home had descended into chaos. And there was Sister Ifeoma, a successful businesswoman whose once thriving company suddenly crumbled to nothing. They couldn't explain it, but something in their lives had shifted since they'd gotten close to Pastor Chika. Meanwhile, Chika continued her secret rituals, convincing herself that this was the only way to keep the church alive. But guilt gnawed at her. Every night, she wrestled with nightmares of the lives she was destroying. The covenant, however, did not care. They promised her that as long as she obeyed, her church would rise higher and higher. She would become unstoppable. But the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. One Sunday, as Chika stood in the pulpit, delivering another powerful sermon, something strange happened. The women she had been targeting for months started to feel something stirring inside them. It was as if their spirits were awakening, fighting back against the darkness that had been consuming them. Ngozi, Amaka, and Ifeoma, sitting in the front row, exchanged glances. They could feel it, a force pushing them to confront the pastor they once loved and trusted. After the service, they approached her. "Pastor, we need to talk," Ngozi said, her voice shaking. Chika's heart skipped a beat. She knew what was coming. "We've been having strange dreams," Amaka added. "And our lives, they're falling apart." Chika tried to compose herself, but her hands trembled. "It's just trials from the enemy," she said quickly. "You must stay strong in faith." But they weren't convinced. Something in Chika's eyes told them there was more to the story. That night, the women gathered together, determined to find answers. They sought out a powerful prayer warrior in a distant village, someone known for breaking spiritual chains. What they discovered shocked them. Through intense prayer and spiritual insight, the truth was revealed. Pastor Chika had been stealing their destinies, using their goodwill to fuel her church's growth. The covenant's hold on her was strong, but not unbreakable. The women returned to the church, but this time they didn't sit in silence. As Chika began her sermon, Ngozi stood up, her voice ringing through the congregation. "Pastor Chika, we know what you've been doing." Gasps filled the room. Chika froze, her eyes wide with fear. Amaka stood beside Ngozi, tears streaming down her face. "You've been stealing from us. You've been destroying our lives." The congregation erupted in confusion, but the women continued. They exposed everything, the secret rituals, the covenant, the stolen destinies. Chika's facade crumbled before everyone's eyes. She tried to defend herself, but the weight of her guilt was too heavy. As the truth came pouring out, the power she had once wielded began to slip away. The covenant's grip loosened, and for the first time, Chika felt weak, vulnerable, and terrified. She fell to her knees, begging for forgiveness, but it was too late. The women had already broken free from her spell, their lives slowly returning to normal. Pastor Chika's reign over the church ended that day. She lost everything, her power, her congregation, her reputation. Stripped of her influence, she disappeared from the public eye, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and shattered trust. The women, now free from her dark hold, rebuilt their lives. They had been scarred, but they were stronger than ever, determined never to fall prey to darkness again. The moral lesson of this story is that power gained through deceit and evil will always crumble, and those who harm others for personal gain will eventually face the consequences of their actions.